why it matters. Spurs have hit the jackpot, the basketball lottery, and have won the number 1 overall pick, which no doubt is going to be going to Victor Wembanyama of France. We just saw his highlights. We just kind of broke down everything he can do. And let's just say the hype, it's there. It's there. Social media, as I mentioned, has expanded how we see not only players locally in the United States, but in other countries. The NBA has had more European players taken over than anything else when it comes to the last few years. The last 5 MVPs of the league are international. You have Embiid, who won it last year, or this past NBA season. Jokic back-to-back, and Giannis back-to-back. Greece, Serbia, in their respective countries. So things are getting bigger and bigger internationally with the talent level that's coming overseas. Now, this also has to do with, LeBron James. I mean, everyone's saying that Victor Wembanyama projects to be the best prospect to hit the NBA since LeBron James. And not only that, some people are saying he could be the best prospect in the history of the game. The hype with LeBron James was the fact that, he was able to get, like I said, an ESPN game as a high school kid. That was the hype. There wasn't the same social media out there to see the Twitter, the TikToks, the YouTubes, everything else as prevalent as it is now. So you get a look into all of what's out there in the world, and there's some crazy talent out there, i.e. Victor Wembanyama. Now, the last time the Spurs had the number 1 overall pick was 26 years ago, and that first pick in 1997 NBA draft, they took Tim Duncan, which eventually led to a dynasty. Tim Duncan, one of the best players to ever play this game. So they had a great path to success. You had Coach Greg Popovich, you had Tim Duncan, you had David Robinson early on, then you had the Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker years as well. But with this number 1 overall pick, the big question is, what is the chance that Wemby becomes an all-time great? Because that's what we're saying he's going to be based off of all the hype. Think about this. Of the last 25 number 1 overall draft picks, only 1 has won an NBA Finals MVP. That was LeBron James. Of the last 25 number 1 overall draft picks, only 2 have won a regular season MVP. LeBron James, Derrick Rose. Of the last 25 number 1 overall draft picks, only 6 have won a championship. LeBron, Dwight Howard, Andrew Bogut, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, Andrew Wiggins. Keep in mind, these are winning championships. Those are not as a star player, but just as a player on a roster. That's why you have some of these Andrew Bogut names and Dwight Howard as they're not the number 1 guy on these teams, right? It's not guaranteed that you'll have success with the number 1 overall pick based off of everything that we just saw. You may say it's more unlikely than it is likely that they're going to have some of the success that we've seen with some of the all-time greats. But with hype comes expectations to be great out of the gate. And are these expectations unrealistic? Now, we put a lot of expectations on Zion Williamson, touted as one of the best prospects in a decade. Yet he's only played in 29 games in the last 2 seasons and 0 postseason minutes. Not exactly living up to that hype. And you got all the drama now, right? You got all the things happening on the side. They're thinking about trading him based off of this draft, potentially. At least that's what the rumors say. You have Ben Simmons, who was considered generational coming out of LSU. Going to be the next LeBron James. I heard that all over ESPN, Fox, everything. Never lived up to those expectations. He's passing up shots in the playoffs, open shots. He's missed time for mental health reasons. Hasn't panned out to be the player that everyone expected him to be, given his expectations. The best turnaround by a rookie ever was Tim Duncan, going from 20 wins to 56 wins the next year. We talked about Tim Duncan being the number one pick of the Spurs in 1997 when we were just recapping the last time the Spurs had the number one pick. That's a 30-game differential from when they drafted him to the next season. I mean, that's crazy. Bird was a plus 32 the next year in wins. Hakeem plus 19, LeBron plus 18, Magic plus 13, Jordan plus 11. All those guys, it took time. And it wasn't just an overnight thing that they were generational for their team that season. So expectations matter. Now, if you're looking at the best to lead a team, where they were who were the best of the best to lead a team they were drafted by 2 championships, that's sticking with their team. Of 3,000 plus players drafted since 1987, stayed with their original team that drafted them and won titles. That was Steph Curry, Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Isaiah Thomas. Only 7. I mean, we could add 8 if Jokic ends up staying with the Nuggets his entire career and wins multiple titles. Other players with draft hype, let's talk about some of the other players that have not gotten over the hump or had a lot of success in the playoffs. I mean, Luka's made it pretty far, but never won a title. Harden, Westbrook, Chris Paul's never won one. Lillard, Embiid. All these guys have hype around them, but yet still haven't been able to win a title. Now let's talk win shares. Win shares. The average MVP win share total is 15.2. The average all-star win total is 10, or win share. The average player in the NBA win share is 2. Now let's take a look at overall number 1 draft picks. An overall number 1 draft pick win shares, the season they're drafted is 4.2, and it peaks year 3 at 7.9, and by year 5 it drops to 5.9. I mean, that's the average. That's the standard. Now, let's look at VORP. Value over replacement. Of the 15 best rookie seasons, only 2 have made the playoffs in their first season. That was Andre Kirilenko and Andre Iguodala, and they weren't even the best player on their team. They weren't the go-to superstar on their team. By year 3, only 4 of these top 15 best rookies led as the leader of their team to the playoffs as a top contributor. That was Pau Gasol, LeBron, Luka, and Chris Paul. So I'm saying all these things here and kind of breaking it down that it's not easy to be a generational player. Even with the greats of the league, it's not easy to get to that point. Now, we're putting a ton of expectations on Victor Wembanyama to be that guy. And he might very well be. He could get there. Injuries, a lot of things have to go right. Now, he's going to a team that needs a lot of help, but he could be a building block for success in a massive overhaul that has proven successful for the Spurs in the past, with the likes of Tim Duncan being one of those generational talents as well. So, can they repeat? Can Popovich turn this into a generational talent and build around him to the point where they can be in that conversation? Maybe. But I'll just say, it's not going to be easy, and there's going to be a lot of expectations, and there's a lot coming down the pipeline for this young man who hasn't done a single thing in the NBA yet. It's crazy. We'll see. And I can't wait to be front row for this one and see how this ends up panning out 15 years from now, or if he's in the league by then. But here we go. Victor Wembanyama. Is he simply the best? I don't know, but this is why it matters on waiting to see how this pans out and if he's going to live up to those expectations. And that's all I got.
Chris and why it matters. Woo. Throwing out everything out there. Nice, Chris. Nice.
I mean, I was looking at some of these, and it's just like, it's astronomical to think how hard it is to be a legend in this league. Like, you know how hard it is.
I mean, it's so wild. You were throwing out some stats, and I looked up. Since LeBron drafted number 1 overall in 2003, only 3 players that have been drafted number 1 overall have won an NBA title since that point. And they're Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and Andrew Wiggins. And you can argue all 3 of those weren't even the best player on their team.
Yep.
In those scenarios. I mean, certainly not Kyrie or Wiggins, with LeBron, with Kyrie, and Wiggins, with obviously Steph and Clay and all those guys. And Anthony Davis, when they won the bubble with LeBron, you could argue who was the better player. I'd probably still lean LeBron. So you literally have, since 2003 and LeBron being drafted, no one like being the best player on their team in a championship scenario as the number 1 overall pick, which is wild because like you look at like that wasn't always the case. And like, you know, Duncan was a layup number 1 overall pick. Like there have been obvious number 1. Shaq was an obvious number 1 pick. Allen Iverson never won a title, but like he was an obvious number. Like it was so obvious for a while, and then maybe that's because people actually went to college at that point, right? So you got to know players a little better and know who they were and their ability. But I mean, Wembanyama's got everything working for him. Every single thing outside of like concern for injury. That's it. That's the only flaw I see right now.
Yeah.
Everything else is there. So do I expect him to win an NBA championship? If you set the over under for Wembanyama NBA titles at a half, I'm taking the over. Taking the over.
I would take the over as well. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to win. I mean, Jokic is look at Jokic. We're talking a lot about Jokic, about him being a unicorn and like a guy that it's taken him till he's 28 years old and he was drafted in the 15-16 NBA season. And it's taken him without the hype of being a generational talent that long to become where he is now. And it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, LeBron, he had the hype and he lived up to that hype given the fact that everything he's accomplished in the NBA, that hype was validated. But to think that this kid is going to be LeBron James status when it's all said and done, I don't know if I can make that leap. And he's considered a bigger prospect than even LeBron. I don't know if I could go out on that limb because that's a lot of expectations. And not a lot of players statistically, and the odds say it's probably not going to happen for Victor Wembanyama. Based off of the numbers.
It'll be harder for him to score than LeBron, but defensively, like 8-foot wingspan, you don't even have to be a good defender, and you can be a good defender. Like your arms alone are going to wreak havoc. Havoc on defense, I would imagine. That's wild.
It's wild. It's crazy, man. So, guys, the NBA is in a crazy spot with all of these international players. Like, like I said, between Embiid, Luka, Jokic, Giannis. Like, by the way, there's going to be most likely in the not next year, but maybe the year after, keep an eye on the NBA All-Star game going international with its USA versus the world, because the world can have enough players. Jamal Murray's from Canada. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from Canada as well. You got all sorts of players, Vucevic, and I mean, just role players, different guys that contribute to
Wiggins.
Like, there's a lot of players from all over the place that are going to be, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I would be ecstatic to see that first USA versus world on NBA All-Star game. And Rec, are you closing doors, man? Or is that your chair again?
Like, what's happening?
I thought I was muted.
Is everything okay?
It's like a haunted mansion, you know? You just never know.
Yes, everything's okay. That was a chair.
That was a chair?
Yes.
What is happening to that chair to make it sound like that?
I'm leaning back,
Um,
then leaning back up.
Time to get a new chair, Wreck.
Cooking Ma,
You
what's
think I'm gonna
going
pay for
on?
it?
How we doing, Cooking Ma? Good to have you in. Looks like you were having some stomach bug issues. Hope you're feeling better. Bad clams. That'll
I haven't felt good the last 2 days, but I just power through it.
yeah,
Chris.
power through. You have a golf trip coming up.
I can't not be healthy for this golf trip, but I continue to eat and drink. So
Did the NBA have a little frozen envelope action to pair VW with a great coach foundation so he can actually develop to be a money-making star?
maybe. I mean, no, I don't think so. But
I mean, it seems kind of like coincidental that we've had
how many
international
years has
stars.
Top have left though.
I mean, not much, but I will say, like, he's known for having. That was my conspiracy theory initially. It was like, and I don't put much into it, but the fact that you have a fan base established with the San Antonio Spurs in France, try to expand the game internationally, knowing that Tony Parker was from France and he got the Spurs kind of on the map internationally in France, and then now you have the biggest French star going to a team that already has somewhat of a fan base out there based off of the old Spurs that won dynasties and championships, that got a lot of hype in other countries in Europe, all of a sudden gets another French star that they're going to be glued to the television for. I don't know. I mean, hit the conspiracy.
I don't. There's been opportunities for conspiracies with better teams finishing with the number one pick than like the Spurs even. I know they've got lucky 3 times now, but
Yeah.
San Antonio is not a great market.
No, it's going to be
It's
here
an
for a
awful
little.
market.
It's going to be with Victor Wembanyama. It's going to be a bigger market just based off of people wanting to see. I think, where do they open up the season, by the way? They open up the season. I forget. There was like a thing where they were talking about, like, is this exciting enough?
Another NBA team.
It was like Charlotte or something weird.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I've seen that Wembanyama is likely not to play in summer league. I say, why not? Why wouldn't you?
Why?
But,
Yeah. Why?
maybe you don't want him to get hurt. Maybe you think he's just fragile. Cosmic Kitty makes a great point, Chris.
Cosmic.
Scott is the future of internet sports. Can't argue that. That's putting it lightly, but yes.
Instant millionaire being so young. Are you still talking about Scotty, or are you talking about Wemby?